You're listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. Join us as we explore new frontiers in consciousness, science, and evolution. And now here's your host, Karen Curry Parker.
It's interesting and a little bit ironic that in spite of our enlightened awareness of the power of love and compassion, we can still struggle mightily in our personal relationships. In my years working as a psychic medium, one of the most common and often most charged questions people would ask me was, is the person I'm dating my soulmate? Soulmate. What a charged word. We say the word soulmate and we have fantasies of the perfect relationship and the partner who's our mirror twin, someone who never says no to us, never challenges us, and gives us a totally perfect union. No fighting, no power struggles, no leaving towels on the floor. It's interesting that many of us embrace the idea that we need struggle as part of our soul path. Struggle helps us discover what's truly valuable in life and the depths of our capability and power. But when we struggle in our relationships, we very easily slip into the old pattern of blaming our partner. She's not the one. He's not my soulmate. He's not on the same spiritual path as me. Our soulmates are not here to co-sign on our dysfunctions and smile at us endearingly while we continue on the static path of denial and blame. Our soulmates arrive on the doorsteps of our hearts to challenge us, push our buttons, make our lives uncomfortable sometimes, and show us the depths that our hearts can go to in this very human experience of life. Hi, and welcome to Quantum Conversations. I'm Karen Curry Parker, and I'm really excited to introduce you guys today to Paul and Layne Cutright. Just hearing about Paul and Layne's spiritual venture is going to make you think it was their destiny to teach about soulful relating. Their romantic partnership was launched by a spontaneous mutual awakening experience. Then their teaching career as a couple moved into the fast lane from there. It all started in 1976 in San Francisco, California. They've been extremely fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, resulting in a lifetime of synchronicity that goes way beyond anything considered quote-unquote normal. After 40 years, they are still deeply in love and gripped by a passion for evolutionary relationships of all kinds. They are voracious learners, researchers, innovators, and pathfinders for soul-inspired relationships. They march to a distinctly different drum than most couples who fall in love. Over the years, they have distilled their studies into distinctions and practices that anyone can learn, and they're going to share some of that with us today. They help their clients and students live from the wisdom of the heart in all of life's twists and turns. Paul and Layne have actually... Pause there for a second, David. Starting over. Paul and Layne help people actualize their full divine potential in their daily life and in their relationships. Today, we're going to talk about what does it take to have a soulful relationship and how do we maintain and sustain and evolve our relationships in this time of upheaval and transformation. So I'm so excited to have you guys here because as some of you may know, I just adore these people, and I'm always excited when I get to share you guys with the world because your wisdom and your guidance has certainly been a touch point for my life personally, and I know you have helped a lot of my clients over the years, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen.
It's a delight to be here with you.
Yeah, we've been looking forward to this, so we're happy that it's happening now.
Yeah, me too. So I have to start with the big question because I do a lot of relationship readings and looking at the mechanics of how people relate. And of course, I talk to a lot of people. And one of the biggest things that I see people wrestling with is I see a lot of people who have been on a spiritual path, who are really, walking the path of waking up and being aligned spiritually, particularly as the world is changing. And even though they have these big, broad understandings of concept like universal love, they're still struggling to really live love in their personal relationships. What's going on?
Great question. You're right. It is a big question.
And it's a 2-word answer. It's a real simple answer, actually. It's called spiritualized ego.
Because what happens when people study metaphysics and spirituality, in our experience of doing this for 40 years, like 90+% of the time, they're intellectual, or they are superficially energetic, and they have not gotten to the emotional level. In our experience, is what it takes to embody those kinds of practices and teachings is to have been involved in emotional healing and purification. Otherwise, it remains at an intellectual level. And I remember in my own experience, I'd been on a spiritual path for a long time. My father was a spiritual teacher, and my life was a mess. And it wasn't until I started doing emotional healing and transformational work, and I remember feeling that all of this spiritual understanding that I had fell into my heart. It was like a gate opened and it fell into my heart. And oh, okay. And that was the beginning of the process of learning how to embody it and to live from it.
And we often refer to that as there's a huge gap between knowing about something and knowing it at a cellular level, so that you come from that place. For example, people can know about the concept of unconditional love, or they can know about we are all one, but living from that place and relating from that place can be challenging. So people have unconscious barriers to being able to live their sacred beliefs. And a lot of our work is about closing the gap between people's spiritual ideas and the way they live their life, the way they relate with people at home, at work, and in community. Because even though personal relationships can be triggered and there can be escalating arguments about the same thing over and over under the guise of, well, it was about Chinese food last week and now it's about Japanese food, or it's about the way you don't pick up after yourself. But the essence of people's upsets gets recycled. And we'd say that it's because people haven't learned how to learn from their feelings, to learn from their pain, to learn from their triggers, so they don't evolve beyond them. They just tend to blame other people. And when we're blaming other people, we're not functioning from the wisdom of our heart. And it's because it actually looks to us like the other person didn't do it good enough for us, or they were faulty. And so we speak from that place, and it creates discord and disharmony.
And it's not intentional when that happens. It is spoken out of an unconscious pattern that is still unresolved. And what Layne was saying a moment ago about knowing about and knowing, the way I like to explain that is we can know about something because we have the lingo. We can talk about it, but when push comes to shove, what happens is we draw on what we know in our body, which is antithetical to the spiritual understanding that we've been trying to achieve. But when we get triggered, when we get upset, when we feel attacked or blamed or whatever, we go on automatic and we lose the whole idea, the whole experience of unconditional love or forgiveness or compassion or whatever, and we act out of our pain. So that level of spirituality and consciousness needs to be embodied. So when we know something, it lives in our body, and that's what we act out of. That's what we're thrown to when it happens, as opposed to when it's merely a concept and we get triggered, then we relate out of our pattern. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And it leaves me, I'm just as you're talking, I'm rolling through the Rolodex of mythologies around relationships, particularly, I would say, in the spiritual community, because there is, first of all, this whole mythology of soulmate, right? And to a certain degree, you guys have had that experience, that sort of you lock eyes with someone across the room and Zoom, you just know, and that's it. And I think sort of part and parcel with that is this whole mythology that my soulmate and I are never going to have any conflicts because we are so perfectly aligned that, everything we do will be in harmony. And if we have a fight, then that can't be my soulmate, right?
Right, exactly.
But I think you gave a definition last night of partnership, and you actually came and shared some information with some of my students. And I'm wondering if you have that definition handy, because it was so profound, and I think it really speaks to what you were just talking about.
So we have a lot of definitions for partnership, and I don't remember which one we mentioned last night.
Do you
recall what we said?
I think it was about quantum awakening, or the purpose of the relationship being to lead us into a spiritual awakening.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes. Well, right from the beginning of our relationship, we did have a spiritual awakening, and it was a spontaneous experience of love. And we were in a public place, actually somebody's dining room that was filled with people, and there was this, it was like a light switch got turned on. And Paul and I looked at one another, and we knew each other casually, but there was this huge tunnel of pink light that opened between us, and it was pulsing. And
the rest of the room disappeared. We were transported someplace else.
It was an extraordinary experience of beauty and spiritual love that really transcended anything either of us had ever experienced. And it took us a while to really understand what that was all about. But that experience of pure love became our true north. We wanted more of that. And our experience of relationships is, well, that doesn't, even if you get something that good, it doesn't stay that way. So our experiment, the first experiment we ever tried, was how to keep the love alive, so that when people fall in love and it feels so good, what happens to make it not feel good? And how does love turn into hate for so many couples, and they end up having rancorous divorces or really dramatic splits? And so our experiment was, it evolved over the years, but basically it was to become aware of the barriers that we all have to that experience, and being honest with ourselves about what they are, and honest with our partners about what they are. And for me, one of the biggest barriers I had to being able to continually surrender into deeper love was a fear of being left, because that was my childhood wound. And so we had to, as a couple, acknowledge when that was triggered in our relationship, when I was unknowingly pushing Paul away because I imagined, okay, it's been good for like 6 months. When's he going to do it? When's he going to hurt me? And we start imagining that our partner is a way that they really aren't, because our past is creating a filter through our perception. So we learned how to talk about that, and that was the beginning of doing what we call heart-to-heart talks, which is the thing that we teach in our first book, Straight from the Heart.
Yes.
So
what she said. But out of that also came how to use relationships, especially intimate relationships, as a path of spirituality, as a path of spiritual evolution, because, as we are alluding to, all three of us here, is that relationships can be one of the most challenging things in life. You can have this wonderful experience of love, and then like Layne said, when one or other of the partners does something it triggers us into the past, and I knew it. It was bound to happen. Here it is. Lacking the capacity to understand exactly what that is. So what we saw in our research was that there was a missing body of knowledge about what constitutes relationships and the practices to express that knowledge. So that's what we made our purpose in having relationships be a path of spiritual evolution, is just like if you go, you get involved in the spiritual path of Buddhism or Hinduism or Islam or esoteric Christianity, whatever it is, there's a body of knowledge that you need to learn, and there are practices that you need to learn and practice. Well, it's the same with relationships. So that's what we did, and it's what we teach.
So that our relationship became a vessel for personal evolution and spiritual evolution for each of us. That's how we related with our relationship. And essentially that expanded over time, and we could see, hey, this is what's going on for everybody. They just don't know this is what's going on, because in a way they think from their ego without knowing that they're thinking from their ego. And the ego is all about getting what I want. And sometimes we approach our relationships like other people are responsible for us feeling good about ourselves or us feeling loved. And when we outsource, when we give our partner the job of making us happy or giving us exactly what we want all the time, whether or not it's in harmony with their own spiritual path, that's our ego. Can you finish my sentence for me?
That's our ego asserting itself, because what happens is our ego, which is our sense of separate self, separate from the world, separate from every other person, this uniqueness that is in this body, in this career, in this history, learns spiritual concepts, then it believes that it knows them rather than just knowing about them. So a relationship, a personal romantic relationship especially, will continually throw our ego up against what it doesn't know. And then it gets defensive and wants to try to prove itself and prove that it's more enlightened or more loving, which is doomed to failure. Is that?
Yes, and where I was going to is anything unresolved in our childhood shows up in our most intimate relationships, because that's where our deepest wounds are. So that means, that's a very big thought, that means that to the degree that we have heart wounds out of our relationship with our father or our mother, or the way our parents related with one another, or the kind of relationship we had with them, if that's unresolved for us, it gets projected in our most intimate relationships. And most of what people's arguments are acting out what to them are invisible consciousness factors. And we help people illuminate those consciousness factors so that they can observe them and deal with them and stop the mechanics of an unconscious pattern. We learned how to do it for ourselves, and then we teach our clients how to do it now. And that's almost a magical, it's the magic of consciousness, that human beings can learn to do that they can learn to observe themselves so deeply that they can see how their heart wounds are being recycled over and over and over again in their most intimate relationships.
So we're in this shift. And one of the things that I've been noticing, and I don't think I'm the only one noticing, is that it seems that truth, and truth being truth with a capital T, meaning the truth of who you are, the truth of your identity beyond your physical experience in this dimension, but the soul of who you are, is kind of bringing up everything that's keeping you from living that truth. And certainly I would say I think a lot of my clients, and I'm not going to lie, me too, the last year has been pretty intense, especially with things that are out of alignment being revealed. Let's say you're in an intimate partnership and all of your truth or all of the lack of alignment is starting to show up in your face. Maybe there's extra tension in your relationship, or maybe secrets are being revealed. I have to just go two paths just really quickly. The first thing is, you said we can't rely on our partner to make ourselves feel loved. And I think there's a lot of, going back to mythology of relationships, a lot of mythology around, you can be responsible for your own happiness. But my goodness, partnership is the one place where you get to get your love experienced, right? There's all this, the languages of love, the ways you want to be loved, how to experience love. And it seems to all come from outside of ourselves. How do you, in the midst of maybe a revelation of truth, maybe a revelation that's painful or feels like betrayal, how do you get to a place of referencing that love from within yourself instead of from outside yourself in the partnership?
You choose to love yourself while you feel the way you're feeling. You choose to love yourself while you're feeling sorry for yourself. You choose to soothe and comfort, to be the voice of compassion in your own mind while you're feeling what you're feeling, rather than resisting it. And we even have a practice, a self-soothing practice, where that is not just a concept, I love myself, I choose to love myself. Well, you need something to deepen that. And so what we would have our clients do is to notice that they're in pain, to let themselves be where they are, and it's a comforting, soothing touch. It's almost like what parents will do with their children. It's a gentle stroking. It's like hugging yourself and gently stroking yourself while you think, I choose to love myself while I'm feeling sad. I choose to love myself while I'm feeling angry. I'm choosing to love myself while I feel victimized. And for people who are choosing to be on a conscious path, overcoming victim consciousness is really challenging, because they make it a bad thing, and they don't want to confront the part of them that feels victimized when other people don't, quote unquote, do it right for them. When other people, their partner, their mate, don't make them feel lovable. If they're feeling bad about themselves, they want their partner to make them feel lovable. That is a time when we need to love ourselves first, and that ignites our partner echoing that truth, but they can't source our experience of love for ourselves. Only we can do that through our connection to source energy. And the biggest connection to source energy that human beings feel is their heart chakra. And if they can intentionally work with their heart chakra in an active participation with their own wound, they can slow down, learn from their pain, and see new choice points, ways that they could choose to see, perhaps, that this feeling of being abandoned is historical. It's not that somebody made me feel unwanted. That's my old wound asserting itself in my mind. I'll choose to love myself while I feel that. And when people do that kind of practice, they're actually transforming that old heart wound. Mm. And if you can do it in relationship with your partner and saying, I notice that this heart wound that I have about not feeling loved and that I'm left all alone is activated, and I'd like your support, which is different than, why didn't you pick up your shoes? I've told you that 100 times, that you know, if you loved me, you would pick up your shoes so I don't have to trip over them in the dark. So there's a step that's missing for people.
And what Layne is talking about, we think of as, she's talking about a warrior's path, taking a warrior's attitude in dealing with this inner unresolved dynamic from our past that shows up in a dangerous way in our relationship but it's the warrior path from the sacred heart. So it's done with love for self, love for my life, love for you. Even though I'm not feeling, quote unquote, loving, I am intending to engage in this from my own sacred heart. And as many of us have learned, there are neurological cells and connections in our heart and in our gut. So it's not happening just in our brain, but it's happening in all three brain-like areas. And the technique that Layne was talking about is really a psychosensory. It's not a psychology, but it's psychosensory, touching the body in the way that our mothers did, generates certain processes in the brain that helps to transform whatever that pain is. But alongside that, and this is what our second book was about, You're Never Upset for the Reason You Think, is that the pain that we experience comes from a thought or a belief that we have about ourselves, that we have been in denial about, that another person's behavior or their words or some outside event triggers that unresolved dynamic within us, which looks like they did it to us. So it also takes a warrior's attitude and approach to go inside and look at, okay, what is this thought and belief structure held together by emotion that I have that is vulnerable to somebody saying or doing that? So when I resolve that, when I can clarify and name that and clear it and heal it and resolve it, then I become transparent to whatever those words are or that event was that triggered me before, because the trigger is not there.
So one of the phrases that's become popular in the last 40 years of our awareness when we started paying attention to this stuff is pushed my buttons, you pushed my buttons, or he pushed my buttons. So he pushed my buttons helps us see, well, I've got the button. So I have a button to be pushed. How am I responsible for the fact that I've got the button, rather than blaming him or her or the organization for jamming on it?
So I have to throw in another question, because I listen to you guys and I think, my gosh, they have this all figured out. They live this, they have the pink tube, they've got the soulmate connection. Here they are living this beautiful expression of love. And I think, how do you do this every day? Do you get it right every day? Do you, is your relationship, do you finally hit this plateau of, okay, now we're enlightened, it's never going to be bumpy again?
Oh, yes, I wish. Actually, yes. Of course.
Yes, we live in a state of bliss all the time. We no longer have any buttons. It's like we're just living in this cloud of love, like the pink light that we had in the beginning all the time.
Well, and what we noticed is we've had years in our relationship where we didn't get triggered in our relationship. It really was so harmonious. But every time we stepped into or invoked a new level of soul expression in the world, there would be perturbation in our relationship. And that's what's happening with the great shift that humanity is going through. We are stepping in to a new expanded state of being able to be connected with the whole, seeing that we are one. What's being required of us is to expand our capacity for understanding and compassion and a real sense that we are connected. And so this means that we're getting perturbed. And if you notice, when you go through the marketplace or on the streets, people are getting kind of cranky. They're just hair triggers waiting to explode. They're trying so hard to do things, too many things. They're overwhelmed by too much information. They're spreading themselves too thin. They're not getting enough rest. They're not giving themselves the peace of mind to not be focused on their technology. They would rather look at their iPhone than meditate, or they're looking at their iPhone to meditate. They're not slowing down their mind. Just riding down the freeway, they'll look at the billboards and read them rather than take in the trees. And so nature can be very restorative and help us reduce all of these perturbations, but we can also learn to slow ourselves down by really focusing on our relationships with people and looking for the love and generating more appreciation. Making our love visible is one of the things that helps our relationships become an oasis of trust and love and spiritual power. But most people they're overdrawn in their relationship account. Their relationships are about the logistics of life than the preciousness of the way they love one another. And if we can do that in our most intimate partnerships, that expands. But when the next level of spiritual expression comes, we'll notice that we get a little cranky. We get more easily triggered. And if you do it enough, you notice, oh, it's that thing that's happening. What is really going on? And then you give it loving attention, and you love yourself where you are one more time, even though you think you should be over this already. You processed that, 10 years ago. It can't be here
in therapy.
Now. It's got to be that other person.
And so the loving yourself part is actually a practice. It's not just saying, oh, I love myself, I'm so wonderful, I love myself, and expect the pain to go away. It takes a practice that affects our body and our neurology, our nervous system. Minus that, it isn't going to do anything, because that goes to the thing I was saying before about embodying the spiritual understanding that we have at an emotional and physical and neurological level. So that gets into that we are quantum beings. There's so many different aspects to us. Those are just the things that we know about. But there are other dynamics, and in this great shift that's happening, those other quantum dynamics that we don't even know what they are also being perturbed and asking a lot of us to step forward. And I was thinking as Layne was talking, one of the things that can trigger conflict in a relationship is when the commitment is deepened. So like we've been dating and now we're going to live together because we've been having such a good time dating. But living together requires a deeper level of trust. So whatever trust issues are present will come forth and be acted out in the relationship, or cleared and healed in the relationship. Or if we're living together and we decide to get married, same thing happens. Or we decide to work together, we want to have a business together, same thing happens big time there. So relative to the shift that's going on, we're asked to make a commitment to our soul, to who we are, and to helping to transform humanity in the way that we can. Of course, none of us individually can transform humanity, but we can be an anchor of light in the world that can contribute to this shift happening. Does that make sense?
That's so beautifully said, because I think, there are all kinds of spiritual statements that we've been reading and hearing, like, be the change you want to be in the world, right? We throw this stuff off like, but there's a real power to really embodying, as you just said, the energy that we're seeking to evolve. And I think, especially right now, when we look at what seems to be a very polarized expression of consciousness on the planet, instead of seeing that from a place of despair, which I think a lot of people are, to instead say, okay, this is what's being brought up into our awareness here, so that we can see where we're at as we up level collectively. And how can I, since maybe I can't go to Charlottesville, or maybe I can't personally fly to Puerto Rico and feed people. What's my part? And maybe my part is looking at my way of being in the world, my relationships, and being right there, being and right as well as much as I can, in order for me to add to the collective consciousness of alignment as we shift.
Yes.
Beautiful, exactly so.
Exactly, and anchoring into what gives you access to a heart space and having practical ways of doing it, grounded, practical ways of doing it. And so part of our spiritual practice is that, and something we teach our clients to do, sometimes we can seem so helpless when there are tragedies happening on the other side of the world, and we're so present to the torment and the angst and the injustice that's occurring. And so we can have those feelings. How do we love ourselves while we're having those feelings? And one of the things we can do in our mind, in our heart mind, is we can remember a time when we experienced pure love. One time, it could be sitting on the beach and just feeling the caress of the sun and the light sparkling. It can be an experience that you've had with a pet, just a moment of love. And so you get that thought in your mind and you feel that experience. You actually can generate the experience of love. You generate it in your heart. You love yourself while you're grieving for the pain of the world. And then you breathe that experience of love to the condition that you are feeling hurt and sad about. So you're sending your love from wherever you are in the planet to that distress. That's one of the things that we can all do at any time. Now, our soul may direct us to get on a plane and start handing out socks or toilet items. Our soul may indicate to us, no, it's not appropriate for us to do that. We can send money, or we can experience love in our heart and notice that in spite of all this turbulence, there is a loving evolutionary power at the heart of it, and we can develop our personal relationship, that all of this turmoil and upset is love reorganizing itself at a higher level, and we choose to trust that evolutionary impulse.
I love that statement. I'm putting that on my desk. If you'd like to learn more about Paul and Layne's work, you can visit their website. It's paulandlayne.com, and Layne is spelled Layne, so paulandlayne.com. And talk to us for just a minute about your new secret project that you're beginning to evolve, your nonprofit work.
Heartwired. Being heartwired. You know, the term, you're hardwired for this, you're hardwired for that. And the message of all of our teachings is to stay in the heart no matter what, to use the wisdom of the heart to evolve. And so we started using the term heartwired back in San Diego.
In the 90s.
2002. And so we're creating a nonprofit foundation, which is our legacy project, because we've been teaching and researching for 40 years, and we have a lot of soul wisdom to share. And so we're going to be offering it through this nonprofit and looking for other partners who are heartwired. You know, you're heartwired. Don't you know that you're hardwired?
You are so hardwired.
Thank you.
And people want to feel more hardwired. They want to feel more connected and how to live from the heart. And that's what this foundation is all about.
So it's a more overt spiritual teaching than the Paul and Layne site. The paulandlayne.com site is about helping couples who are in crisis, or couples who are working together and they're having a hard time and it's affecting their business, or couples who want to make a difference. They're doing okay, but they want to have their relationship be about making a contribution. And of course, we work with individuals as well, and through all of it, emotional renewal. But that's the focus of our private practice. We also work with clients and students who've been with us for a while, and we'll get into the Heartwired material with them. But those are like our advanced clients and students. So we want to make that much more accessible to more people now.
Through Heartwired, and that site, heartwired.com and .org, hasn't been launched yet. We do have a page at paulandlayne.com, which is paulandlayne.com/heartwired.
All one word.
And it'll take you to signing up for an announcement list if anybody feels drawn to living a more soulful life in a social level, a bigger picture, helping the world upgrade. And
do you have time for me to go back and touch on something that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, Paul.
Okay. You were talking about soulmates earlier, and that's something that we have thought about, and there's so much out there about soulmates, and there are teleclasses and programs for people to attract their soulmate, and using law of attraction and simple metaphysics, in our view, to attract the soulmate. And like you said, people find what they think is their soulmate, and everything is going to be wonderful from then on, but they very eventually find out that it's not, and then they doubt that it's their soulmate. So that throws the whole idea of soulmate into question for me. And I think that just speaks to people wanting to feel connected. So having a soulmate, well, certainly that'll make me feel connected. That'll make me feel loved. But the same unresolved issues from our past, our childhood, our earlier heart wounds will come up in those so-called soulmate relationships. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, I say absolutely. I just have to sort of do a big toot of the horn for Paul and Layne, because I will say, of course, I've known them personally for many years, and certainly they have helped me in my own adventures through relationships. But I will say that I have never seen anybody be able to take couples, particularly couples in crisis, to the place where I've seen you take people. I have seen you take people who are in the middle of enduring the worst kinds of betrayals that we can experience in our intimate partnerships. And after you work with them, they leave your office hand in hand. And I just think that it's a powerful testament to your ability to reconnect people back with the truth of love. And if you are struggling, or you are in pain, or if you're really wanting to up-level the heart of your relationship, do yourself a favor and check out their work, paulandlayne.com. They've got a couple of books on Amazon. One is You're Never Upset for the Reason That You Think You Are. Now, forgive me, the title is, the other one is Heart to Heart Talks. Is that correct? Is that the...
Straight from the heart.
Straight from the heart. That's right. I remember I remember doing the Heart to Heart Talks.
Yeah.
So check out their work. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you for continuing to leave a legacy of love through your work, through your teachings, and through the beingness of love that you both embody so beautifully.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thank you for your gracious invitation to have this conversation and generating this space in which we could share with one another.
It's been a pleasure.
It certainly has.
Thank you. Spiritual ego often causes us to fall into the trap of thinking that because we regularly engage in some kind of spiritual practice that we are immune from the struggles of the human experience. Anytime we think we have all the answers, we lose our capacity to fully engage with the power of our open hearts. Answers come from your mind. Your heart doesn't always have the answer, just compassion. When we enter into relationships, we bring a whole suitcase full of conditioning. Even our genetic lineage and history influences how we behave in our relationships. It's hard to be in partnership with another human being. Partnership involves finding those places where we are aligned and accepting those places where we are not. What Paul and Layne so beautifully demonstrate and teach is the power of self-awareness and the sole purpose of partnership as a key element for our own personal growth. The life we are living is about being fully expressed soul energy and form. It feels like a nice theory, but when we have to live it in our daily lives, it can be a bit of a roller coaster. Our soulmates, our true soulmates, come to challenge us, push on us, and inspire us to stretch beyond our limitations and to discover how to be and express love beyond the limitations of our human understanding. The world needs love in action. The world needs an army of lovers who can set clear and loving boundaries, who can courageously reveal the truth to each other, who can see with fresh eyes what needs to be healed, released, aligned, and brought into the light. Love, true love is work, but it's the work that will ultimately save the world. If you'd like to learn more about your unique relationship energy, what you need to feel deeply loved, and what your partner needs too, please visit our Quantum Conversations Facebook page where you can get your free love blueprint, your human design. When you know who you are, who you truly are, you'll fall madly in love with yourself first, so you can be a better lover of others. I'm Karen Curry Parker. Thank you for joining me for Quantum Conversations.
Thanks for listening to Quantum Conversations with Karen Curry Parker. For more information, visit joyfulmission.com.